Hello everybody, Nick Peternell here at mtg.one. Today we're going to be playing a deck I call Death and Metal. It's sort of a spin-off of Death and Taxes, but instead of, I don't know, a ton of taxing effects, we still got taxing effects, but we also have some metal effects. We got some spice from Standard and Old Standard. We have Toolcraft Exemplar, and you know, in Aether Vial decks, I think that it's pretty easy to turn on the Metalcraft or make it a 3-2. It's a 3-2 pretty consistently with Aether Vial, Smuggler's Copter, Tide Hollow Sculler, and the old standard favorite, Thraben Inspector. And we kind of put this into a traditional Death and Taxes shell. Instead of playing Eldrazi, we're sort of lower to the ground, which I really like. I think that Eldrazi in Taxes has some really good matchups and it plays some more powerful cards, but it can get kind of clunky at times. Its mana base isn't great because it has to play the 4 Ghost Quarters and the 4 Eldrazi Temples, and it's still, you know, a 3-color deck in that sense. So the mana base in this deck is pretty pristine. We get to play 6 basic plains, a couple basic swamps, and Concealed Courtyard and Godless Shrine over stuff like Caves of Koilos. So it's a little more streamlined. And we also get to play Smuggler's Copter. Some versions were including Smuggler's Copter, and you know, I think it sounds great. This deck tends to flood or screw, and it needs some way to filter its draws, and Smuggler's Copter is just an aggressive card that plays well with Toolcraft Exemplar, Thraben Inspector, even Aether Vial. One of the coolest lines in this deck is just turn 1 Aether Vial to turn 2 Smuggler's Copter, especially if your opponent is, you know, tapping out for like a haste creature like a Goblin Guide or something, or they're attacking, and you just get to vial in a Thraben Inspector and block a Smuggler's Copter or something like that. Plays well with Flicker Wisp. We can attack with the Copter and then post-combat Flicker Wisp the Copter, and then it comes back and it can block, giving it sort of vigilance. We got 4 Tide Hollow Scullers. Not only is this just a good hate bear, sort of, it has some interesting lines of Smuggler's Copter where, like, you'll play it, and if your opponent has one removal spell, they either have to kill a Sculler on the spot, which gets you a permanent exile, or if they let it resolve, then you get to Crew Copter for free, and it really taxes their removal. And this deck is really, really good at doing that with the Thalias and stuff like that. The reason to play this deck right now is probably Leonin Arbiter. If the best decks in the format are playing 4 Traverse the Open Wild and like 12 to 14 fetches, then Leonin Arbiter is just insane, paired with Ghost Quarter. The decks aren't running a lot of basics right now, and you can kind of punish their greedy mana bases quite a bit. I briefly mentioned Thraben Inspector as sort of a standard throwback, but it's really, really good in this deck. This deck is, one of the biggest knocks against it is that it lacks any form of card advantage. Being white-black, it's just not really a natural fit, especially with Thalias and stuff, no way to draw cards, but Thraben Inspector is a great way to Crew Copter and draw cards. It basically does what it does in Standard, but it's still good here. A little bit of synergy with Flicker Wisp, too. Let's see, what else? Let's move over to the sideboard. We basically have your traditional Death and Taxes sideboard. There are some considerations to be made for the fact that we are playing 4 Vials, 4 Copters, and 4 Thraben Inspectors, and that's that Stony Silence is a little bit worse. It can end up hurting us a lot. I mean, we have 12 cards that it affects, so I typically will only bring it in against Affinity, and I'll lean on Fragmentize for artifact and enchantment removal and other matchups. So outside of that, you know, we got our Rest in Pieces. Dredge is seeing an uptick lately. It's getting a little more popular. It's not as dead as everyone thought it was. We have a Thalia. This is coming in a lot of matchups, especially against like Eldrazi, where, you know, their Reality Smashers come into play tapped. Sometimes they'll play Thought Not Seer, expecting to block with it, and that kind of shuts it down. I can't emphasize enough, Toolcraft Exemplar gives this deck a much more aggressive slant, so you're able to actually close games on turn 5 pretty often. Which, you know, I mean, that's medium by standards, but in a deck like this, it's as disruptive as it is. That's actually a pretty quick clock. So that we have some other removal and Fatal Push, Sin Collector, Orzhov Pontiff, sort of the mainstays of of this archetype. Anyway, that's death metal, and I'll see you back here for round one.